Are you a Black woman in leadership and you are burnt out? Well, you are not alone. Today, we are going to dive into Black women, leadership, and burnout. Welcome to Moving Beyond Burnout. My name is Camesha Jones-Brandon. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, recovering workaholic, and burnout overcomer. If you are joining me for the first time, please like the video, please share and subscribe to the YouTube channel and my newsletter because we're going to talk about everything related to Black women, increasing self awareness, and also developing practical pathways to overcome burnout for good. So, thank you so much for joining us today for this very important discussion on the hidden toll of burnout among Black women leaders. So, the biggest thing that I want to talk about are Black women in leadership well? Throughout American history, Black women have endured racial, gender, economic, and environmental stressors that impact our mental well being. The effects of these stressors can manifest mentally and physically in our bodies. Chronic stress is a pervasive issue affecting Black women. Black women are dealing with stressors and demands that are insurmountable. Statistically speaking, Black women are 20% more likely to report serious psychological distress than their white counterparts, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In addition, Black women have higher rates of poor physical health outcomes as a result of psychological stress that often goes undetected. And now, when we talk about what's happening with Black women in the workplace, Black women experience more microaggressions than any other group of women and are 4 times as likely to be othered in the workplace. Also, Black women are dealing with isolation, with only 26% of Black women reporting having strong allies in the workplace. And since the pandemic, Black women's mental health concerns have increased as a result of all the different stressors and demands that they are facing. So, we are here today to not just unpack those statistics, but to talk about how it's affecting two Black leaders today, which is myself and Dr. Nadia Johnson. So, before we dive into the discussion, I would love Dr. Nadia Johnson, if you could introduce yourself, share more about your work, and then your journey in leadership as a Black woman.
Sure. So thank you, Camesha, for having me on. Please call me Nadia throughout this conversation. We're just going to have this nice after hours healing women's discussion. My name is Dr. Nadia Monique Johnson. Hi, everyone. I'm the founder and CEO of the Black Women's Mental Health Institute. We're a national organization that's founded and headquartered here in Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I am. And we seek to build awareness of and support for the mental and holistic well-being of Black women and girls. And, I think I'm just now getting into this space where I am embracing the idea and the concept of me being a leader. I think oftentimes Black women are so busy doing the work, our heads are down, we're toiling through, we're creating and building tables and establishing networks and doing the work that we are passionate about. We don't oftentimes pick our heads up and go, wow, I really am the business, right? Like I really am doing some things and I am a leader and I am a change maker. I am bringing about some positive things. I'm just now getting in that space. And now I think that now that I'm embracing that idea of who I am as a professional and acknowledging that that is the path that I'm kind of on in regards to the work that I do, I am also aware of the fact that there aren't that many of us. So just going back to the statistics, like you were mentioning, that once women get into certain roles, once they find themselves in certain positions and they are decision makers, they find themselves, like you said, isolated. There aren't that many individuals who are in the room that look like them, but also in the room advocating on behalf of the things that are going to benefit other Black women. So I'm looking forward to this discussion because I'm sure we're going to weave in some of the professional and the personal since we've gotten to know each other in both of those spaces.
Yes. Well, thank you, Nadia. I was calling you Dr. Johnson because I wanted to
I
be
know,
your
I heard
profession
it. It's
now.
okay. We're off the clock now. Hey, we are off the clock. We are off the clock. I'm sitting Indian style with a sweatshirt on. We are just going to make this conversation casual.
So I appreciate you just really even sharing that a lot of times
A
we
lot
don't
of
even
times.
recognize like our own leadership as Black women. Like we're busy doing the work, showing up, doing all the things, and we don't always see ourselves as leaders. And
Mhm.
one of the things that sometimes grapple with is thinking about, now that more Black women are really identifying themselves as leaders, what do we need most to be well and to do this work? I was talking to someone who shared that some of the statistics that have come up about Black women just really struggling mentally and physically from the demands of work, and the roles that they're in as leaders, is really highlighting maybe some things that maybe men were covering up or not really sharing or telling us about how challenging sometimes some of these roles can be and what it demands of you, that we may not have been aware of until we actually stepped into a leadership role. So, can you talk about, just from your experience, like what do you feel like Black women in leadership need most to be well and to be impactful?
I think Black women, in order to be all of those things that you just mentioned, we need mentorship. We need community, and we need to do our research, if that makes sense. We need mentorship because there are things we don't know when we're going into certain spaces. It's one thing to learn as you go. I'm a big believer in that, and I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, because we could have 15 million degrees and there's still going to be something out there that you're not familiar with. But doing your research is even going beyond the technicality of, can you do the job, and asking yourself, do I want to? I think that's the question I learned the hard way. I worked so hard getting degrees and aspiring to specific roles and all of these different things. And I learned what I felt like I needed to know technically to do the work in that space. And I got in that space and I was like, this is not the vibe for me. This is not, you don't embrace the way I work. You're so conventional. You're so traditional. You're so bureaucratic. These spaces were so limiting in regards to the ways that I think and the ways that I go about my work. And they were not embracing of newer concepts and newer ideas. But guess what? Guess who is not, and this is me talking about the academic space, who's not present in those traditional, conventional ways of doing things? Black women, because our intelligence and our intellectual contributions were not considered at the foundation of those things. So here I am coming into these very traditional spaces, but with different ideas and different concepts and different theories. That actually is a recipe for disaster. Trying to force myself to fit into a space that is not going to embrace me because they do not respect and value who I am. So when we're even thinking about what do Black women need, sometimes they need to ask themselves, do I need to stay here and persevere and push? And some of us do, and some of us do need to do that, and some of us have done that. Or do I need to step away and build my own thing, because I'm going to be able to excel in a different way in my own path than I am if I stay here? So I think mentorship and intentional research of, what do we really want? What are we striving towards? What does success look like for us? And then moving in that direction after defining those things for yourself.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what you brought up. It's something that I can do, but should I do it,
Mhm.
right? Like, I am intelligent. I have gotten the certifications, the degrees, the work experience. But in this particular role as a leader, is it really a good fit for me? And sometimes
Exactly.
that can be a really hard conversation to have with yourself, because it's like, I've done all the work, I can do
Yeah.
this. But then there's a part of like your lifestyle and how you're feeling day to day that is in a conflict with that. And then on top of that, do you decide to persevere or do you decide to bow out? And I think
Yes.
that is where a lot of Black women are right now, especially
Mhm.
with this wonderful movement around rest, a movement around self care, around boundaries, around our relationship to ourselves outside of what we produce. Is like, do we persevere or do we create and go a different way in a different path?
Mhm.
Um, and so the mental health impact of leadership. Um, could you speak more to, whatever you'd be willing to share, how being in leadership as a Black woman has impacted your mental health and your experience with burnout?
Sure. So Black women in leadership at any given moment, even some of us who run health organizations, can be very hypocritical in how we are encouraging everyone to do these wonderful things to take care of themselves. But we don't always do that. I think one of the things is to just acknowledge that stress is a part of life, right? You're not going to avoid stress. You actually going to have it in any way, shape, form, or fashion in your professional or personal. So it's not about navigating or avoiding stress. It's how do you frame it when it's presented to you? Even like the question you just asked of Black women, do we persevere or do we bow out? Neither one of those is a right or wrong decision. They are just a choice. And how you frame that choice is how it's going to mentally impact how you feel when you make that. Someone could make the decision to bow out, and because they're framing it as a failure, that negatively impacts their mental health versus framing it as this is a learning opportunity. I learned for myself that this wasn't a fit. So I'm going to pivot, I'm going to bow out, and I'm going to find something that is a fit because that's better for my mental health. Or if they choose to persevere, how do they do that without kind of letting feelings of having to prove themselves settle in? Because we've done that historically too. I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to prove myself. No, you really don't. If you are coming to the table with all the skill sets that you have, your work will speak for itself. And it's one thing to self-promote in hopes that someone is acknowledging your work. It's another thing to feel as though you have to prove yourself to people who do not see your value and may never will, regardless of what you're able to produce on the job. So when I think about the mental health impact of leadership, I think about those things. I think about how do we frame the choices we make? How do we see ourselves in the environments that we're operating in? And are we speaking life into ourselves, or are we being overly critical of ourselves, which again was going to have negative impact on our mental health?
Hmm. Yeah, you said so much there. I mean, like just how you frame things. And as like mental health professionals, when we're working with our community, we talk about the way that we frame and the way that we see the world and how that shows up and impacts our choices.
Mhm.
And one of the challenges that I've seen is what you mentioned. If you experience challenges with your mental health or burnout as a leader, being feeling like something is wrong with you, right? Or
Mm,
feeling
yeah,
like you're not doing something right. And also in our world when it comes to stress, people will and sometimes almost with the happiness thing where they're like, you're supposed to be happy all the time or stress free
yeah.
all the time. And
Mhm.
we kind of get those messages, but when it comes
Positive all the
down,
time.
yes. Now, I would love that, but like you said, is it reality for everybody?
Mhm.
Absolutely not. So with preparing for being in leadership and being in leadership roles is how do we protect our mental health and how do we see ourselves and value ourselves and our worth regardless of what a job or what a career or what entrepreneurship may actually throw at you.
Sure. And I think it's okay to ask yourself. I actually encourage people to ask themselves those questions of themselves. Like, what do I have to learn here? If I'm feeling a particular way, if I'm feeling unseen, if I'm feeling overburdened, if I'm feeling uncelebrated, if I feel as though I'm not advancing in this job, how does that make yourself, and having a conversation with yourself about those things so that it doesn't linger into something that could negatively impact your mental health? But I also think it's okay to have those questions of the people that you work for. And I think having not confrontational or argumentative conversations, but direct conversations. Now, somebody could interpret it as confrontational or whatever, but that is not on us. That is on someone else, right? But to ask those honest conversations. I'm a big fan of like any old sitcom, honestly. As long as it has a laugh track, that's even better for me. But one of my favorites is Living Single. And there's an episode where Regine is dating this artist and she's looking into his eyes and she's like, we're just not connecting and you don't understand me, you don't see me. And she's looking at his face and she's like, oh, nothing's there, right? I definitely found myself in a position where I was doing all this work that I knew was exceptional because I was getting awards outside of the department, but my department wasn't valuing it. And I found myself having these conversations, not confrontational, but truly acknowledging that I'm asking for a recognition, not in the form of payment, not in the form of time off, not in the form. I wanted more flexibility in regards to the type of research and works and program I was doing outside of that department. When I got to the point where I was looking at them like, wait, what am I doing? I'm asking these questions of myself. Why is this stressing me out so much? It's because I'm not being seen, and I don't feel like I'm being heard. But when I asked the question of them, guess what? They weren't seeing me, they weren't hearing me, and they ultimately weren't trying to. And whether it was because of my race, whether it's because of my gender, I don't know. All I know is I had to put myself in the position, like you just said earlier, is do I stay here and try to fight for recognition that I know I earned, or do I leave? And I didn't realize until after I left that I was in full burnout in that space. And the reason I knew is because not just because of the, mental, and psychological stress that left my body, but it was the physical pressure. I felt lighter when I left that office. I felt emotionally lighter. I felt physically lighter. Everything about my body, mind, and spirit changed and shifted after I left that space. And I think Black women normalize sometimes the feelings of burnout. They have that stress, they have that burden, they have that heaviness when they go about their lives, they go about their jobs, they go about their relationships, and they don't question it because they feel like this is just what life is for Black women. But when you make healthier decisions that do prioritize yourselves, and then you come out of that, it's almost like I don't ever even know how else to describe it. You when you come out onto the other side of that and you see how it feels, you'll realize, wow, I was carrying that load for all that time and I didn't have to. So I think maybe a part of what you're saying too, or a part of where your questions might be leading, is how do we prevent Black women in leadership to not normalize burnout? Because we do. We're good at it. If we don't know how to do anything, we know how to persevere. We know how to push. We know how to innovate. We know how to change. We know how to get where we need to go through difficult circumstances. We know how to do it. But like you said earlier as well, we're embracing this space of rest. And now, yeah, I can do that, but I don't want to. I can, but I've learned boundaries, so no comes off of my tongue a little easier than it did for my mother and before her mother, before her, and her mother before her. I could say my daughter says it now all the time. I don't know, I can jack her up because she's 15. That's a different conversation. But how can we get Black women in leadership to not normalize burnout? Because it's not our legacy, it's not our heritage. It's something that we had to do to get where we needed to be. Now we're in a better place. What other strategies can we implement to get to where we need to go next?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with the normalization of overworking, the normalization of sacrificing even to your own detriment. And it's not just in our personal lives, but it shows up in every sphere, and especially in professional spaces of feeling like I have to work twice as hard to be happy. I mean,
Yes.
all those things, and we believe that it has to be our plight, which it
Mhm.
absolutely doesn't. And I'll share with you, I went through a period of just really, serious burnout because I thought that I had to operate and work in a certain kind of way to be effective. And I got an opportunity to um, take a sabbatical. And in the
Mhm.
sabbatical, they forced you to say, okay, when you come back, what do you need to have in place to maintain what you've experienced?
Yes.
And which was, it helped me to be like, I need to delegate. I need to put certain things in place. I need to take care of myself on a regular basis so I can maintain this. And then this really, I guess, the past couple of months, I've transitioned and, sunsetted some things, transitioned from having my hands in too many things. And it's like I come home and I don't have to stay up late, to get things done. I come home, I have a full weekend where I can do what I want to do. And it's like, this is what normal is really like, but it almost
Mhm.
doesn't. But when you've been going, like you said, a certain way for so long, it's like, oh, this is what it's really supposed to be. Well, not I mean, it's whatever, it's,
Yeah. Yeah. A
relative, but
balance. Yeah.
this is like normal. The other stuff that I was doing was running me into the ground. And
Mhm.
so, like you
Mhm.
said, how can we resist burnout? Resisting burnout, right? What can we do to have in place so that we're not normalizing overextending, overworking, and not taking care of ourselves. So what are some of
Mhm.
the ways that like you have resisted burnout as a leader?
So I think a couple of things. One of them is I did leave, a position that I really enjoyed, but left it because of the environment and created a space where I could do similar work for myself and then invest more into the organization that I was already running. That actually helped with burnout. Leaving a space that was not healthy and toxic. It was a challenge and a leap of faith because there are certain things about having a position that are just easier than anything that even resembles any form of entrepreneurship, but it worked better for me. Another thing is defining success for myself. I think sometimes, when you're younger, you're told you go to college, you get out, you get married, you have two kids, you get a house, you get a car, you get your 401k, you find your church, you do all these things. Life is not typically that easy going for yourself, right? Like it doesn't always work out. Life is gonna life. And when it does, you have to decide for yourself, am I going to hold on to these very static traditional ideas of what I've been told I should desire, or am I going to lean into something that actually feels more in line with who I am as an individual? Once I started making those decisions personally, but also very much professionally, stress left. And also because I had a better definition and a better picture of what I wanted, it was easier for me to say no. Because every opportunity is not the that's going to fit. If it's not a fit for you, it's going to cause stress. And if you
Mhm.
say yes just because it looks good, then you might be saying yes to someone else's blessing and then saying yes to something that's just going to cause you, stress and unhappiness and kind of create an environment where you might lean into to burnout. So those are a couple of things I think. I just defining success for myself, um, you know, choosing a career path and a professional path that's more in line with who I am as a person. These are all things that you have to learn in life, right? Though I don't know that somebody could have told me that 20 years ago and I would have been receptive. Because at 20 something plus odd years ago, when I was in my 20s or something, I would have been like, oh, the world is my oyster and anything is possible. And I'm just gonna go out here and do. And then you go out here and do, and then after a while, it's like, okay, you have to almost grow into that wisdom. Um, so those are a couple things. Some other not as formal things are, and I believe in this strongly, is a group chat. Like my group text, I have about 3 or 4 of them with different types of dynamic women who are doing work in their own spaces. Some of them are just girlfriends or shoot the breeze. Some of them are professionals and we're networking and supporting each other through professional decisions. Some of them are like, I have a group text with my daughter's, like the mothers of my daughter's friends, right? And we're doing intentional check-ins about our teenage daughters and the things that they're up to and how they think they're so sneaky, but they can't get anything by us, that kind of stuff. Um, all of those things help with burnout because when you isolate in those spaces, if I isolated as a mother, oh my gosh, what would I even do? I need to talk, I need to be in company and in community and in village with other mothers because the world is bananas. When I was 15, nothing that I experienced is anything like what my 15-year-old daughter is experiencing right now. Um, I never started a nonprofit before this one. And so now to have it grow to the extent that it has, I need to be in community and in relationship with women like you who knows what it feels like to build something from the ground up and watch it explode and watch it positively impact the lives of others. I need that. That's going to help prevent me from burnout because when I get to the edge, I have full faith that y'all are going to talk me back,
Mhm.
I have a group of a group text with a group of women that I graduated I did graduate school with, right? And we jokingly say this, but we talk about the significance of it. When I graduated my doctorate, 3% of the doctoral degrees that year went to Black women, and that hasn't changed much over the past decade or so. And I've got this group text of like 5 or 6 of us and we all have it, but we also all have stories of what it was like to almost walk away from it, to almost say, you know what, this isn't even worth it, or to struggle to figure out how to financially get on over the hills to achieve it. So that's probably another way too of resisting burnout is having having those sister circles, having those communities in place, having those things, if you try to navigate life personally or professionally on your own, again, that's another thing that I see as a complete recipe for burnout.
Yeah. All the things you said, the community is huge. Moving people out of isolation. Also, like you said, choosing a career path that's more aligned with who you are and what you
Mhm.
really need at this point in your life. And I also love what you shared about defining success on your own terms, because when I've worked with women, and even for even just myself, who've experienced high functioning depression, or are really, they're doing all the things, but they feel unsatisfied. And some of it has to do with these rigid standards or boxes that we put
Yes.
ourselves in that can make us feel like we're
Yes.
not valuable, or that there's something wrong with us if we don't achieve or do things within a certain time. And it can cause you to overwork because you're trying to meet, these,
Yes.
yep, these different timelines. For me, some of the things that I've done to resist burnout is literally like building in self-care into my everyday, getting my full 8 hours of sleep. Even if I was talking to you before we got on, like, about how I had to stay up late to do something, but I still woke up 8 hours later,
Right.
still getting my full sleep. If I feel tired, to stop, and it sounds like
Right.
something that is like so, like, it's so, sounds so common sense, but for a lot of people, when we feel ourselves tired, when we feel ourselves overwhelmed, we just keep going. And that's like my personality, to push
Mhm.
through. And so I've learned to allow myself to stop, to
True.
allow myself to pause and trust and believe that everything will be okay. And then lastly, just really having a life and identity outside of work, outside of what I produce. And some of the challenges is, we invest a lot into our work. We invest a lot into what it took to get there, but all these other areas of our lives may not be getting TLC, that it's not
Yes.
happening. It's all focused on work, producing, and achieving. And I've really, over the last maybe 2 to 3 years, have been like separating myself and having a full life, outside of work, to be able to have, like you said, that balance, and to prevent burnout. So the last thing is just to talk about some of your favorite self-care and community care tips for Black women who are in leadership. So I know you mentioned some of these sisterhood group chats. I'm in one of them that,
Yes.
with you, but can you talk more about just some of your like top self-care tips as a Black woman who's in leadership, and then also some of your top community care tips?
Sure. So I do want to kind of piggyback on something that you just said, because you mentioned all of those great things that you're doing, and I was listening to you, and I was like, ah, crap, I'm not doing any of those right now, right? So I think that also part of self care is having grace with yourself. Because sometimes you get it right. Sometimes me personally, sometimes I get the sleep. Sometimes I get my full 3 to 5 workouts in a week. Sometimes I eat properly. Sometimes I do, and then there's sometimes I don't, whether it's a really busy season. And then I find myself disappointed in myself for not doing the same things that I'm encouraging others to do. So I think having grace is one of those things. Other personal self-care tips that I really enjoy, and I recognize that when I don't do them, I feel it, is working out. Like, I really do enjoy working out. I feel better when I do. I don't always like to get up and go to the gym, but I feel better after I do it. I look better after I do it. I feel healthier when I do it. Making time for friends. I think it's real easy to say, "Oh, girl, I can't come out tonight," or "Oh, I'm tired. I'm just going to stay home." Versus, like you said, kind of separating yourself out from things that aren't work related. It can't just be work and sleep. Sometimes it really does have to be work and outdoor activities. I love being outside. If I could be climbing a tree, swimming somewhere, kayaking, hiking, what have you. If I could be outside, I want to be outside in the sun. And I need to make time for those things and prioritize those things. Community care. I feel like the challenge for, again, like probably us, is that community care is a part of what we do, right? So what does it look like to utilize a service that is a part of our professional identity? But you still can. Like I feel like I get the benefit of that when I go to someone else's community event, right? Because we organize community, like our organization, we organize mental health activities all the time. But what does it look like for me to just go to a church meeting, regardless of what your faith foundation may be, or if you don't, if you do mindfulness exercises, what have you? I have a very strong faith foundation, very involved in my church. Prayer, quiet time, reading my devotional books, are all things that sustain me. And when I don't get those things, I feel it. I feel it right away. Ways of incorporating all of those things into one activity. And this is something that my neighbors, they've noticed me doing it and they think it's absolutely hilarious. I didn't think it was a big deal, but they've stopped me a couple times. They're like, I don't know anybody who does this. Is I'll walk and take my work call sometimes while I'm walking just the neighborhood so I can get my 10,000 steps, which I'd never really get. But I love to read. So, if I'm not running or if I'm not talking on the phone, while I walk with a book, and I'm just walking, and they're always joking, like, you're going to walk into a tree one day. You're going to walk into someone's parked car. Like, I don't know how you're walking around like this, just reading and reading, but I love it. It's so relaxing. So self-care for me looks like those things. Self-care for Black women in leadership, just really ask yourself those serious questions. Ask yourself all of those serious questions about what success looks like for you. Make sure you have mentorship relationships. Make sure you have girlfriend relationships. Some of those group texts should be affinity spaces where you are in full community with Black women. And some of them, they don't have to be, right? Because there are some allies that will really feed into your soul and give you insight that you might not know you need. And it's okay to dive in and tap into those things because those will fuel you as a leader as well. So yeah, those are a couple of things.
And those are all like great personal and also like leadership, self care and community care tips. For me, one of the things that I do for community care is to ask for and accept help. Um,
Hmm.
so hard to do. I remember, and it can be just, I mean, some of the smallest things. When the previous place that I lived, there was like a walk up, and I used to have to, take my groceries up, 2 flights of stairs. And
Hmm.
I remember somebody asking me one time, "Do you need help?" And me struggling with all these groceries. I'm like, "No, I don't need help. What? I absolutely need help." But like giving myself permission to ask for help and to receive help, because I think there are more people out there than we realize who have our backs and are willing
Sure.
to support us, personally or professionally. Something else that I do for self-care, which I talked about a little bit earlier, is just really just trying to build these practices into my daily life. And some days, like today, were really hard, right? But I
Mhm.
still, I was like, okay, I'm doing too much. I need to take a nap for even just 30 minutes before I
Yeah.
go, throughout the rest of my day. So trying to like give be okay with taking time to rest and taking time for myself. In leadership, I definitely think, just in the vein that you were talking about earlier, like be okay with charting your own path. Like, even if it's the, what they say, the path or the journey less traveled, like it is
Sure.
okay to think expansively about who you are and who you can be as a leader, especially in
Mhm.
corporate spaces and government spaces and in nonprofit spaces as well. Black women who are professionals are told we have to hit these certain milestones. We have to operate in a very specific way. But like you said, we can recreate and make the best of a situation that is unconventional, but it's still impactful and it's better for us physically and mentally. And then the last thing I would say, if you're a Black woman in leadership, in the same way that Nadia has talked about, just really strengthen your support system.
Mhm.
Isolation, they say divide and conquer, isolation and being in silos is literally how our mental health conditions continue to escalate, right? And so when we're in community, we literally need that for our well-being. I think the Surgeon General said that loneliness is equal to like 11 packs of cigarettes a day. So,
Sure. Yep.
yes, finding your community, whether it's online, whether it's in person, finding your community inside of work, outside of work, with family, like all those things are just so important for our well being. And then the last thing, know when you need to walk away. Um,
Yes.
know when you need to walk away, know what your limits are. I worked with several Black women in previous positions who said, I'm not going to let them run me out here. You know, I want to do this work and I want to be here, which I respected because some were able to really do that and come out okay. But there were other women who I saw who were not okay
Mhm.
after they came out of it. So know when it's time to transition, when it's time to walk away
Absolutely.
into something new. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much, Nadia, for being here for this discussion. Um, tell us more about how we can stay connected to you, how people can support the Black
Sure.
Women's Mental Health Institute.
Sure, absolutely. So you can follow us on our website, bwmhi.org, and we are on Instagram and TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it. We're probably on there somewhere. And you can follow us. We do free counseling. We have pilot programs right now. Our pilot program is in Alabama, and it's pretty massive, but we're looking to expand to other states. We do have an annual conference that we host every year, the Mental Health Equity and Liberation Summit. It's for everyone. We do get clinicians that come and get their CEs at that event, but we are very interested and intentional about making this an allyship conversation. So multiple forms of difference are present in the room, and a lot of community partners, as well as those living with mental health concerns, are there for that event, and it's pretty powerful. And then our monthly sister support meetup. So you talked about like this conversation very much felt like one of our sister support meetups. Um, it's always facilitated by a licensed clinician, but it's our affinity space for Black women to come and talk and share and vent if needed, and just have a safe space to release whatever that might be they might have on their minds and get support. So, you can follow us and sign up for any of those things on our website.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. We got a lot of comments on LinkedIn.
Good, good.
Um, Yeah, some great comments about all the things that we talked about. So thank you everyone on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram who tuned in for this live stream today for Moving Beyond Burnout. So the next topic that I'll be discussing with Marissa Price, who is an amazing social worker and healer, is Black women healing together. So that will be on the 13th of March at 12 p.m. Central Time. This is my first time doing an evening one, and so I might transitioning to do evening more. Honestly, I do like the middle of the day, but I think I might, after the 13th might do some evening stuff.
Okay.
But so in honor of Women's History Month, we're going to be talking about the ways that Black women are healing together in community. So join me every other Thursday at 12 p.m. Central Time. Please like the video. Please share this video if you are a Black woman. If you are not a Black woman and you know someone who is in leadership and who is struggling with burnout, please share this video with them. We want to be able to reach as many people as possible to know that there is hope, and that we can be well and we can show up in our best selves and do the work that we love. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, I'll be putting my newsletter link in the description. I release a newsletter every 2 weeks to talk about a lot of different topics related to burnout that I think could be valuable for people to listen. So please subscribe to that as well. And you all take care of all of you and be well.
Thank you. We celebrate you. Thank you for creating this space.
Yes. Take care.